That's not what's happening here, folks. And we always say the government's bad at everything. It's a little bit of a lie. The government is actually really good at one thing, and that's spending your hard earned money. Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. Our story here is dealing with over $1 trillion of COVID relief money has still been unspent. This comes from Fox News. It is written by Audrey Conklin, and she titles it Over $1 trillion in COVID Federal Funds Unspent GAO. Well, Audrey starts the article off here saying the report comes less than 2 weeks after the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, who's a renowned liar and corrupt politician, Democrat from New York, said the budget committee had reached an agreement to allot $3.5 trillion for a spending package that would complete President Biden's infrastructure plan. Despite over $1 trillion in unspent federal funds sitting in accounts, Democrats are focused instead on how they can spend trillions more by reaching back into taxpayers' pockets or adding more to the nation's debt, House Budget Committee Republican leader Jason Smith said, and he's a Republican from Montana, and he made this statement on Tuesday. Well, the House Budget GOP said here, GAO confirmed that there is over $1 trillion in unspent COVID funding, yet Washington Democrats are focused on how to spend trillions more in taxpayer dollars. This reckless tax and spending spree is a massive burden on every worker and family in America, which is why you're getting things like inflation, which is why you're seeing prices going up at the gas pump, which is why you're seeing prices going up at the grocery store, because Joe Biden constantly wants to spend and not spend money efficiently here, which is why you still have $1 trillion of COVID money still unspent. And somebody could be like, well, didn't it just happen last month? No, it didn't just happen last month. This happened months and months ago here, and it's still unspent. Look, if people really needed the money, it should have been utilized like that. Not going on months, not going on multiple months. If this is truly relief and you need to get money out there to the people, then it should have been spent extremely quickly because, again, the people need it. It was an emergency. It goes on here to say the $1 trillion figure includes $156 billion approved by the Department of Health and Human Services and $210 billion that the federal government allocated for state and local governments. A number of state and local governments have been planning ways to use the federal funds for needs unrelated to COVID-19, such as infrastructure, folks. So this has nothing to do with COVID. They're taking this money and allocating it to different places. And hell, they don't even need the money. What they're doing right now is they're trying to figure out what they could do with the money. You see how that works? For example, if you were in a tight pickle, you know what I mean? Like, shoot, my rent is due. I'm going to get kicked out. I got to pay this thing now. Can somebody give me some relief? You would take that money and right away put it into your rent so nothing bad happens. That's not what's happening here, folks. And we always say the government's bad at everything. It's a little bit of a lie. The government is actually really good at one thing, and that's spending your hard-earned money, your hard-earned tax dollar money here, going to places that might not necessarily need it. Now, there is a little bit of speculation happening here because I don't know the ins and outs of each place that is receiving this money, but it makes you wonder if you're not utilizing it now and it's been a matter of months, then what's going on here? And don't take it from me, there's a direct quote on when this stuff got enabled. It says here, as of May 31st, 2021, of the $4.7 trillion allocated by 6 laws for COVID-19 relief, including about $1.6 trillion appropriated by ARPA, which was enacted in March 2021, the federal government had obligated a total of $3.5 trillion and had expected $3.0 trillion as reported by federal agencies here. It is so tough to even talk about money in this type of terms because not every day you're just willy-nilly saying trillion left and right. I'm struggling here saying billion and trillion because it is ungodly amount of money here, especially when our debt, our national debt is through the roof, folks. We're going to get into some scary times here, I would imagine, the next 20 years in terms of our debt, where we're all going to be in the same bucket here, having to have our taxes increased because our federal government, our Congress wants to sit there and spend our money idiotically like this. I'm all for giving people relief, especially when the government shuts down businesses, stops people from going to work, keeping people at home, all these things. But when you're willy-nilly just throwing money out left and right and not being smart about it, that's where I have a problem, and that's where corruption happens. And that is why our government needs to figure itself out here. And, I take that back. The people need to get in the poll, the voting booths, and vote to get our government back on track here. Well, it goes on here to say some Republicans previously expressed concerns with President Biden's nearly $2 trillion American Rescue Plan, and who wouldn't? The guy's spending trillions of dollars just left and right. Now I get it. The comeback for the left, they're like, well, Trump spent trillions, Trump did this. Yes, he did, and I didn't like it. I did not like it. I'm a fiscal conservative. I don't like when my government is just spending money when we don't have that money. In the same way, especially if I was being true to myself as an accountant that gives people financial advice, you think I would tell somebody, hey, you know what? Yeah, keep running up your credit card, man. Keep taking out loans that you can't pay off. That's a great decision. That's a great idea. Keep doing what you're doing. Why is the government anything different than the way an individual handles their finances? It's not any different. It's just bigger. That's all it is. You would not be stupid by just running up your credit cards, not paying off your loans, going out doing stupid stuff, constantly taking out more money that you can't pay off later. What do you think is going to happen to your life? It's going to be extremely terrible in a matter of a few years. And that's where the country is going. That's where Congress is going. These are the people that we elected, the Democrats elected, the Republicans elected, to sit there and constantly spend our money and not allocate it correctly. Well, it goes on to say, pointing out that about $1 trillion in federal funds had gone unspent at the time he signed the plan into law in March, folks. March, okay? We're already almost in August here, and $1 trillion still hasn't been spent. What is going on, man? The government has run a cumulative deficit of $2.2 trillion so far in 2021, according to a bipartisan policy center deficit tracker. House Budget Committee Republicans are continuing to sound the alarm on excessive federal spending and its impact on inflation, and they're absolutely right. And it makes me wonder as to why do this now? Do you know what I mean? Like, you need time for recovery here. Now, if you want to have this conversation later and actually have it be bipartisan, and you want to have that conversation with Democrats and Republicans and see what is needed throughout the country, I get that. We need infrastructure, but what Joe Biden's including in infrastructure is not infrastructure. They're claiming everything is infrastructure. You buying your baby diapers to them is infrastructure, folks. If you look at the graph, and I did a video on this a while ago, if you look at the graph and the proportions of the money that he's trying to spend here in comparison to what actually goes to roads, bridges, railroads, railways, things like that we actually consider infrastructure, it's a minuscule amount, folks. I forget the percentage. For some reason, my mind's going to 5%, but I don't think that's correct. It's somewhere low, possibly in the single digits here in percentage-wise of how much money's going to infrastructure. But he's just spending money left and right, which, again, is why you're going to see inflation, because the government has to get their money from somewhere. So either they're going to print it, they're going to sell bonds, or they're just going to increase your taxes. And Joe Biden's manipulating his own base here by saying, oh, well, I'm just going to go after the 1%. I'm going to go after anybody that's making over $400,000 a year. You're not going to make this money back in time just by going after the rich. You're not. You're going to go after the middle class, and you're kind of already seeing it. You're seeing this idea of going after the middle class, not necessarily in taxes, kind of in sales tax, but in taxes, but also you're seeing it more specifically at the price of a consumer good or service here, which is why I brought up earlier the grocery market, gas prices, anything is going up. Why? Because people need money to take care of themselves. The government has to tax people to take care of the people here, and you're just seeing a vicious cycle of it going a big circle here. Well, this article ends off here saying the historic level of inflation of our country is facing, fueled by president's misguided spending policies, amounts to a pay cut and a tax hike on every worker and family in America. That's basically a different way of saying what I just said. The country cannot afford the continued reckless tax and spending spree Washington Democrats are proposing. Now, I don't like the focus here on just the Democrats because this has been going on for decades. Both Republicans and both Democrats. If we're going to call ourselves, I'm a registered Republican, but if we're going to call ourselves fiscal conservatives, then we need to act like fiscal conservatives. We need to actually be conservatives here. We're not conserving anything here. We're not conserving that traditional idea of not spending money that you don't have, or spending money you don't have. Why do that? You're just going to make matters worse here for everybody. At some point, you're going to have to increase taxes. It's the only way you're going to get money. You can't just keep printing money. For us to pay off this debt, you're going to have to increase taxes on everybody across the board. So again, we're screwed in probably the next 20 to 30 years here, I'd imagine. I could be wrong on those numbers, so don't quote me. But there you have it, folks. The Biden administration still has $1 trillion in COVID federal funds unspent. Now, I believe that money might have been allocated, but it's the people that are receiving that money that haven't spent it yet. So it makes you wonder how much they really actually needed in relief in the first place. I have more news coming at you today, so stay tuned for that. If you enjoy the Bald Brad Show, please don't forget to subscribe. A lot of you aren't subscribed. I would say almost 50% of my viewers or more actually are not subscribed to the Bald Brad Show. I ask for your support in supporting a conservative channel here. And also, please don't forget to like and subscribe, share it on social media. And as I said previously, I will see you a little bit later here today on the Bald Brad Show.